Hello everyone, this is Crystal Lynn, and I am here with part 2 of my discussion yesterday on hormonal psychosis and the Chiron return and different cycles in astrology that can be in a time of our life where we're really being triggered and really being shown things by the universe that we need to look at. Now today, I'm just going to be grooming a dog here. It's my client. And so I thought while I'm grooming, I would share with you guys. A lot of times when I do videos with grooming, people find it to be calming. And I got to work today. So anyway, I want to say, first of all, that these videos that I'm trying to just bring up a discussion through my own research, for hundreds and thousands of years that's been done before me. These are patterns and cycles that, can be really proven that there's certain times in people's lives that we see some of these major events happen. Now, when I'm talking about, I've been talking about women, and men can apply this to the areas of life, maybe being in a relationship with a woman. I'm talking about something that is building up over years. Now, I don't want to scare anyone because I believe with knowledge becomes the opportunity to prepare and to, take on things in our life that maybe we've let go of that end up becoming, a perfect setup for the perfect storm in our lives. Many of you that were born in the 60s, were born with Pluto in Virgo, and so for many of us, it's a lot of caretaking. We were born as caretakers, And during this time that I was going through my personal, what I call life review, I was under a lot of stress, I was allowing a lot of things to happen. Some things were happening that, were out of my control. During this time leading up, and this time, age period and cycle that I'm talking about right now is from 48 to 51, which we consider a Chiron return. It's a 3-year period. This is a time that often we consider being premenopausal. And it's different for everyone. The cycle's a little different. But for me, being that I was born on a full moon and have a moon in Pisces, it was a very, very emotional time. So like I said, everybody's going to experience this differently. Some of the things that were happening in my life at that time, building up to, was my mother had broken her hip and had a series of medical issues that I had to take care of her really full time, and it was very scary. I was on a lot of anxiety because I was in and out of hospitals. Some of the medical issues, were getting worse. And, my heart and everything, my focus, everything about me was on getting my mother well. My mother and I very close, so that added to a lot of emotions. The other thing that had happened in my life when I was 42 is I did have a late in life baby. Now, it's kind of interesting because I was born in 68. And it's funny because I think like Brooke Shields and Celine Dion, Mariah Carey, all born in 68, also had children during that late in life time. So it was a pattern going on, and I could talk more about that pattern. But it was quite a shock to me. It wasn't something, I ever thought would happen. I was thinking I was moving into a completely different stage of my life. I had gone through a divorce, okay, that's another thing, and so I was in a relationship with somebody that that I'm married to now and love very much, and it's a perfect match for me, but I, was really, I went, was raised as a Christian, and so when my marriage started falling apart, I really had to admit that, the things that were happening, I just couldn't handle anymore. It was kind of like I felt like I was letting God down, letting my family down. We'd been married for 20 years, and when you lose your voice in a relationship or something becomes very unhealthy for you, it's really hard to admit that. It's really hard to face that, but many of you guys know, and nowadays it's talked about, being in toxic and dysfunctional relationships and what have you. So those things were happening. I was the kind of person that, I jump out in the real world and go for it. I was an entrepreneur, and I had a horse ranch at that time and raising my kids, living my dream. I was riding horses every day, teaching kids to ride, making a living. And, it seemed like all of a sudden, one by one, like a deck of cards, like dominoes, my life was just falling apart. I could no longer control it. I could no longer put it back together at the last minute or make those last minute decisions. It was like everything I touched definitely didn't turn to gold. And so, psychologically you start feeling like, okay, does God not love me anymore? Am I cursed? Very emotionally taxing, and I think, spiritually as well. And so there was a lot of things building up. Also, having kids, and my husband having kids, we were kind of like the Brady Bunch, so bringing in a lot of different energy. And, we had family events and things we did, and so pretty soon, I just started getting where I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe, and my sensitivity level was just out of this world, and I prided myself in being somebody who was strong and that could help others, and that's really where I found my joy, is in helping others. I never was really, never really liked to really focus that much on myself, surprisingly. I found more satisfaction in, being the hero, and so that has its dynamics as well that aren't always healthy, because I think we can, our false ego can get in the way, that we think, we're doing something great and everybody thinks we're great because we're laying our life on the line, for everybody. And so when I couldn't no longer do that, a lot of the relationships that I had that were built on those things started to, completely fall, completely be destroyed. And so my relationships, because I was changing, and again, people get afraid, but, the universe is really bringing things to the surface for a bigger reason than we could ever understand at that time. And I was being, I was suffocating. I lost my voice. I was trying to hide my anxiety, trying to hide those things, thinking I could self-medicate, I started smoking a lot of pot, a lot of marijuana to deal with anxiety. And, I'm not against that. I think that is probably, of course, it's different for everyone. So I'm not against that. But as my anxiety increased, I was getting a little over the top. And so with that, comes chemical changes in your mind and in your body. Having a late in life baby, I'm now home with a toddler, with a child. All my dreams, all the things I was working on, got put aside. And so you know, there can be a sense of depression going on. Letting go of who you were and what you know. So I'm just sharing some of these things with you, and maybe you can relate to one or two of them. But for me, I was building up to the perfect storm, the tsunami. So, you know, trying to be grateful, trying to be thankful. You know, I did get remarried, very happy, trying to build on that. My new son, my older kids, you know, all those things were my focus. But as my hormones started to become more erratic, leading up to my Chiron return, I didn't know what was happening to me. And, you know, it got so out of hand. I started to have manic episodes, and then followed by depressed, and followed by, you know, breakdowns in relationships and losing relationships because I just couldn't be, and I couldn't compromise anymore either. The things I had kind of compromised for to keep a relationship, I just couldn't do it. I'm not blaming someone else. I'm just saying the dynamics were changing, and I wasn't putting up with shit either. I was kind of getting to the point where it's like, I cannot handle these things. But a lot of the relationships blew up in, you know, really dramatic ways. And then we have, you know, the issues of social media and Facebook. And pretty soon, you know, you're getting judged by everyone and your pictures. And if you have a booger on your nose, I mean, I don't know what. And then the next thing you know, you're getting blocked. Or you're blocking others by people you care about. And so there's these really radical things happening to your soul, to your spirit every day. The lights of the computers, the high constant vibration, the addiction of, you know, wanting to prove you're okay, you know, not allowed to show that, you know, you're really falling apart. So we're all posting the good pictures, you know. I look back through all those times I was going through stuff, and it looks like my life is just happy as could be because I was prideful and I didn't know what was happening as well. So, you know, without getting into, and we can get into it at some point, but the final eye of the storm, the final tornado in my life that led me to get help, led me to slow down, led me to have to stop completely my work, my business as an astrologer. I'd also gone back to school during this time, online school for creative writing and entertainment. And so 4 years of intense school. I just couldn't stop. I was just so afraid to stop and so afraid to fall, so afraid to hit the ground. But ultimately, you know, one thing after another. So, you know, I did the first video yesterday talking about some of the symptoms that can happen during this time, this Chiron return and leading up to it. And, you know, again, this is not to scare anyone. Everyone can handle it differently. And I think in hindsight now, I could look back and there's some things that I could have probably done. First of all, I was not listening to my intuition, to my spirit, telling me to stop people pleasing, to telling me to quit beating myself up, you know, having a spiritual crisis in my life, going through divorce and going through things, feeling like, you know, you don't have God in your life anymore, not understanding that I was going through changes. At that time, I did find astrology, and that actually, I think, was my saving grace. But, you know, I was condemned by a lot of people in the Christian community because, you know, it's easy to lump the type of astrology that we learn today and use today as a weather channel, following cycles, you know, as the occult. So, you know, I was following the devil. So, you know, there was that pressure. But I couldn't deny that astrology was, I was just understood it. It was speaking my language. It really helped me to understand that not to beat myself up, that we all have these cycles and shadow sides and different things, and that we're all in this together. It kind of started allowing me to be human. And I had never allowed myself to be human before. You know, I always wanted to be, you know, rising above, and, you know, some of us go through traumatic childhoods, but, you know, my mom and dad were always boosting me up. And so when I started coming apart, you know, that was a lot of pressure for me as well. What happened to Crystal, you know? So, you know, again, just having a discussion, and I just want to remind you guys, I'm not a doctor. This is through my astrological research and my personal life, along with all the lives that I've studied during these cycles. This is just to give us awareness of how we can become aware of ourselves and our bodies. So the first thing is, as you're approaching, or even if you're in this time, one of the number one things I think is to really continue, if you don't already know, to get to know your body. We can hold a lot of trauma in our body. And when that happens, when these emotional upheavals happen, you know, we can get very sick, you know, whether it's mentally, physically. Sometimes, you know, this is a time where you see a lot of women getting breast cancer and all of those things. And I think it's a scary time, but it's a time that we're really being asked to connect with our bodies. And for so many of us, we don't put ourselves on the table here, you know, on the playing field. So if you're going through high anxiety, you know, please consider some things to really help you release the anxiety and stress, such as swimming, massage, going to someone that, you know, can help you spiritually, listening to your body, not denying yourself. Now, maybe a point in your life you could have handled a lot of things, people and places and things, but during this time you're very sensitive, and you know what? Give yourself permission to be alone. Give yourself permission to disconnect from unhealthy relationships. And, you know, you don't have to blow them up. You can just start taking care of yourself, and, you know, just let people know, this is what I have to do right now. I didn't know how to say those words. I had lost my voice, and so that built up. You know, sometimes, you know, you got to allow for those isolated moments and times. You know, really understanding, you know, the narrative that you're talking to yourself, you know, those negative voices and thoughts, you know, they build up. And so if you're struggling spiritually, or to understand maybe, you know, your religious views, or you're having a spiritual crisis, allow yourself that. Allow yourself to ask questions. Allow yourself to take a break. Allow yourself to reevaluate some things. You know, you're not going to go to hell. Even the Bible talks about, you know, Paul says, test all things, you know. So if you want to even kind of look at that, you know, we're always being told to test things, you know. You know, if you can't be in large groups like church settings, and, you know, people are telling you that, you know, something's wrong with you, you know what? That's okay. You might want to do some small group stuff, or you might want to worship and just spirituality on your own. You know, when you have a loved one that's going through illness, and, you know, you're giving everything, you need to also realize that, you know, you're an important part, and if you don't stay healthy, you can't help anyone. And I think there's a certain level of letting go and trusting the universe. And I know for myself, I wasn't going to let go. I was going to make sure I was going to take on the doctors, the hospitals, whatever it was. And, you know, that played a toll on me. This is not the time to probably let, you know, your stepbrother or brother move into your house and sleep on your couch, because, you know, you need your space, and you need to be able to really, you know, create the space that you need during these times. And so often, you know, things start to happen and we don't stop them because we're still feeling like we need to, you know, play the nice guy. We don't want anyone to be disappointed in us. But again, you're the only one can make this serious. You know, when I was going through this, I was having a lot of anxiety building up to this point. And I would say, oh man, I'm just having anxiety. And the people around me, you know, they weren't really listening to me. And it was kind of like, you know, well, everybody has anxiety, you know, but I was suffering from extreme anxiety. And I started not sleeping, and, you know, I had some people in my life that things were just really unsettled, so you start becoming paranoid, and, you know, you start seeing things, the perception different than it is. So, you know, being on the internet became very stressful for me, but that was where my job was as an astrologer. But, you know, I started getting weird messages and different things and just feeling violated. And I needed a break from it. And, you know, I didn't want to admit failure and give myself that break. But ultimately, I was forced into it. You see, the thing is, the more we resist these things, at least in my experience, the more the universe has to get really loud in our lives. And that's where things can really blow up. The more you hang on, the more you try to control it, the more you lose your voice, the more you stop connecting with yourself, not feeling worthy. You know, all of these things add up. And I was saying earlier, you know, those of us born in the 60s were born in a very service-orientated mindset where we serve the world. We're the servers. We're the ones who make the dinner and do the dishes and take care of, and, you know, but in this situation, there's a time when we have to make a reversal. And that's what, you know, some of these cycles leading up to it is basically turning your whole life in a completely different direction. Everything you've ever known seems to fall apart. Your ideas, they're not working anymore. And it's very devastating because you feel like, you know, your foundation is being pulled out like a carpet from underneath you, and you don't know what to do. Finding astrology was the beginning of helping me with a new foundation, and also realizing that I can have a relationship with God the way that speaks to me and the way that I'm comfortable with and healthiest with. And, you know, all the voices of, you know, the devil made you do it, and, you know, you're the devil's now. You know, all those are scare tactics. And so when you're raised with a lot of religious scare tactics, that's one of the reasons why it's hard for people to admit that they're having, you know, some difficult times. So as we continue these conversations, I just want you to ask yourself some questions right now. You know, whatever age you're at, what patterns are you developing? And they're going to change. Looking at your relationships, you know, you may not be able to change everything at once, but if you're in a relationship that you want to be in, but there's, you know, you've lost your voice in, or, you know, you don't feel like anyone's, you know, appreciating you, and all of those things, they weigh on you. They weigh on your self-worth, and they weigh on that depression. And when we're feeling depressed, for a lot of people, is when they start doing things, anything, to get them out of that depression. And sometimes those things become very dangerous or become, you know, very destructive. You know, if you need to see a doctor, you know, see a doctor. Research, though, what you're going to be, you know, what medical treatment. Don't just take any doctor's, you know, have them give you anything and you don't know what you're taking. Nowadays, we really have to research everything. Find a counselor or a spiritual friend or somebody that you can trust. Sometimes in life, it may just be one person. And, you know, in those times, I was, you know, doing a lot of self-pity. You know, the song, "Nobody likes me, everybody hates me, I think I'll eat some worms," right? it's kind of that self-pity, but a lot of my relationships were falling apart because I just could no longer sustain them. And sometimes the truth is what it is, or maybe the truth, the way you are expressing it, may not be the perfect way, but when you're feeling that, you know, you're in a situation that's life or death, which can happen when you're going through these things, sometimes things blow up. So to realize that, you know, allowing relationships to take a back seat if they need to while you're really getting well. So again, I'm just sharing some things with you. We'll continue to talk about these things. You know, is there prevention? I think so. You know, I think we're learning enough now and giving ourselves permission enough now to take care of ourselves. And, you know, letting go of the idea that we have to be perfect and, you know, and worrying about others judging us. All of those things take their toll, you know. So, you know, reconnecting with who you are, grounding who you are, is very important. Hi, baby. You want to say hello? It's very important to ground with who you are, and to think about these things. So all I'm trying to do is bring up a discussion and say, are there any areas in your life that are really starting to spin out of control? You know, address them, and don't let anybody stop you from taking care of yourself. It has to be a priority because the energy in the world as we speak, based on certain planetary lineups, Neptune and Pisces, per se, are very high vibrational. And so we are not dealing with things like we used to. We're not seeing things. And there's a lot of anxiety, social anxiety, emotional, you know, all of those things. Empaths are coming out now, but so are, you know, the narcissistic relationships, the years of abuse, all of those things now, we're seeing them in a whole new light. So I think there's enough stuff now coming out that the generations coming up will have a chance to really, you know, have knowledge. My generation, you know, we didn't. I was raised, you know, give your enemy your coat. You know, if they slap you on the cheek, let them slap you on the other one, you know. And I'm sure that they're in context that has some good meaning, but in reality, in our day and age, you know, the nice one is the one that's being victimized. So being nice anymore is difficult. You have to protect yourself all the time. And that's hard for people who are loving and caring. It's sad, but, you know, nowadays we, you know, being vulnerable and being honest leaves you a target for a lot of people. And so these things, these issues that are happening, turning ourselves upside down, turning our beliefs upside down, are hard on people emotionally and mentally. But if we can understand them and begin to understand there's ways to handle them and there's ways to, you know, put ourselves in better situations, then, you know, getting permission to do that. I didn't have permission. I beat myself up thinking I was a failure because I couldn't give like I used to, and I couldn't just accept everybody the way they were and take the brunt of it, you know. So all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close right now, and we're all done. You want to say hello? You see how cute you are? She's a little Westie. And we'll talk more. We'll talk more about all the different things that we can look at for healing, and also taking a look at the things that we need to shine a light on. So, okay, you guys, have a really great day, and I hope this was helpful, and I hope you comment below. I'd love to hear from you and hear about your experience, or if this video helps in any way, you can also email me below and check out my website. Come visit me, and I can help you find your birth chart. I can help you with different things. So come visit. All right. Have a great day.